So people get interested in Bitcoin in the first place for various reasons. Perhaps they're interested in technology and software and programming. Perhaps they're interested in economics. Perhaps they're interested in finance. Perhaps they read a science fiction book and start thinking about cryptocurrencies that way. Or perhaps they read a tirade on modern art or fiat art, and that's the reason why they get interested in Bitcoin. And clearly it doesn't matter the reason why you get interested in Bitcoin in the first place, right? If Bitcoin succeeds, if it continues to grow and has a long-term impact, if the price goes up many multiples and you're able to hold Bitcoin during that time, the reason why you got interested in Bitcoin in the first place is clearly not important, right? It's almost an irrelevance. But what I think is important is, as you continue through your learning journey, learning more about Bitcoin, diving deeper into the Bitcoin rabbit hole, is to get a better understanding of what's most important about Bitcoin and what ensures that Bitcoin continues to grow, continues to run, and continues to improve over time in various different areas. And I certainly think the most important thing about Bitcoin at its heart is the code and people running that code. I think everything else is almost noise in comparison, right? If there are problems with the code that people are running in the various software projects that keep Bitcoin running on a day-to-day basis, if bugs are introduced and people aren't running those software projects to spot that bugs are introduced, then Bitcoin collapses. If Bitcoin becomes ultra-centralized because no one runs nodes or no one verifies their transactions against their nodes, then Bitcoin fails. If users don't understand what's going on and they just get told by an authority figure what software they should run and don't have no understanding of the consensus rules of Bitcoin and how consensus rules are changed, if users have no idea and just follow authority figures, then I think that's terrible for Bitcoin. If transactions are censored, that's terrible for Bitcoin. That kind of links into centralization. If Bitcoin doesn't scale, if the whole world wants to use Bitcoin yet we don't have those off-chain protocols built out so that we can onboard as much of the world population as possible, then that's clearly not good for Bitcoin. And if there's no developers building out Bitcoin products and Bitcoin services and no one using or testing those products and services, then, I mean, these are all things that could ensure that Bitcoin fails long term. So then contrast that to some of the economic elements of Bitcoin, right? So like a lot of people get obsessed with this 21 million figure, right? There's only going to be 21 million coins in Bitcoin. And I think that's important to the extent that we don't want the crazy quantitative easing, money printing that we're seeing in central banks and have been seeing over the last decade. We clearly don't want that in Bitcoin. And clearly a network of informed users and a healthy decentralized network is never going to allow that to happen. But if Satoshi had encoded a limit of 22 million rather than 21 million Bitcoin, would that have any impact on Bitcoin's prospects today? I would say no. If Satoshi had encoded a tail emission such that there was never actually a upper limit for the total supply of Bitcoin, it just continued to grow over time. If that tail emission was quite small, just to keep a block reward for miners post 2140, I would argue that would have had no impact on Bitcoin's long-term prospects. So I think all the economic arguments kind of boil down to we don't want central banks pumping the monetary supply like they have in the last decade, and Bitcoin can stop that. So in terms of the economic argument, I think it's basically covered by this tiny little pamphlet by Hayek, which is Choice in Currency, a Way to Stop Inflation. It basically argues that if there isn't a monopoly on currency. If there are other currencies to choose from, then you're going to choose a currency that isn't getting inflated away, even if it's not your national fiat currency. A tiny little pamphlet that covers that argument, and I think once you understand that argument, I think that's as much economics as you need to know. But in terms of the technology and all the things that could go wrong if we don't continue to build on what's most important, code, running code, testing code, then and the comparison with the economics argument is all of these books on Bitcoin technology that will continue to grow in number, and by no means do they cover all the aspects of Bitcoin technology, Lightning technology, off-chain protocols. It's continually growing. There's still so many challenges to overcome. There is so much more software to be written, so much more software to be used and tested. So I've got this quote at the top where I say it's the Bitcoin technology stupid. It's kind of a play on a quote an economic advisor said to Bill Clinton, which is, it's the economy stupid, basically saying his presidency would succeed or fail based on the economy. And with Bitcoin, Bitcoin's going to succeed or fail based on its technology, based on the code, based on people running that code, based on people testing that code. The thought leadership is not too important. Certainly don't get involved in the pump and dumps for alternatives to Bitcoin. Try and get closer and closer and closer to the centre. What's going to determine whether Bitcoin succeeds long term or not, and that is code and running code. So yeah, it's the technology stupid.